If you like the Young Turks podcast, I think you'll love a lot of the podcasts on the TYT network. Old School, it's one of my favorites, one of the favorites for a lot of the listeners. Please check that out, subscribe, share it. That makes a big difference, and give it a 5-star rating. Thank you. All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian with you guys. We've got a fun show ahead. A Republican turns on Donald Trump and says we should do impeachment. Heads explode, so that'll be later in the program. Also later in today's program, Rachel Lear is the director of Knock Down the House. That's the movie about AOC and the Just Democrats. We're going to show you that interview. I did that recently, and we will re-air it for you guys because we had done it on a Friday. And then tomorrow, another presidential candidate on the program, Ben Glebe, is going to join us again. He was on the panel on Friday. But this time we'll talk about his presidential aspirations. And then we're also gonna do an Ask Me Anything on tomorrow night, so don't miss that. We've got Beto O'Rourke Town Hall we're gonna cover tomorrow night. So tomorrow is very, very busy, always tyt.com. And don't forget, I'm going to Iowa.
I forgot already.
Yeah, well, boom, that's why I reminded you, okay. June 8th, Des Moines, Iowa, be there for history. Okay, and when we start something fun and exciting.
You know, Glenn Beck is selling something as being there for history.
Oh, that's right.
We're gonna talk about it later on today's show.
Well, what he's getting you to sign up for is historical pain, trapped in a limited space with him and Bill O'Reilly. Okay, that is not what we're going to do. Anyway, come join me. Register for it at tyt.com/rally. tyt.com/rally. All right, Anna, lots of stories. Let's do it.
All right. Donald Trump has some dirty laundry, or at least it appears that there could possibly be some dirty laundering happening. At least that's according to some who previously worked at Deutsche Bank. And an explosive New York Times piece over the weekend indicates that Deutsche Bank, the one bank that was willing to do business with Donald Trump following the number of bankruptcies that he's had actually contacted federal investigators both in 2016 and 2017 over possible criminal activity in his accounts and Jared Kushner's accounts. So let me give you the details on what the Times is reporting. Executives at Deutsche Bank, which had lent billions of dollars to the Trump and Kushner companies, rejected their employees' advice when these employees flagged the accounts. The reporters or the reports were never filed with the government.
Okay, so I just want to clarify two things here. First is, so it never got to the federal government, it should have, but those employees, now 5 of them, talking to the New York Times, saying there was suspicious activity. And guess, you're never gonna guess which government it was linked to. Morocco, obviously. No, kidding, Russia. Wow, another wild coincidence. I'm sure it's no evidence at all. Anyway, we'll get into that in a second. But I might, my second point clarification here is, I might revive tick, 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 tick.
No, please don't, please don't.
Okay, but here it is. We told you, Deutsche Bank was the only bank that was willing to do business with Trump of the major banks in the world, other than Russian banks.
In fact, he was
giant coincidence.
He was elected into office owing Deutsche Bank a whopping $300 million.
Yes, but also know that, and it's very relevant to this story, Deutsche Bank has been sanctioned many times by America and Europe for doing money laundering. You'll never guess with which country. Tunisia. Okay. No kidding, Russia. Okay, so now let's give you the rest of this details on this story.
So let me be clear in noting that the Times spoke to 10 different employees, former employees and employees at Deutsche Bank. One of those former employees did go on the record. Her name is Tammy McFadden, and she's a former Deutsche Bank anti-money laundering specialist. And she was the one who kept flagging these accounts and going to higher ups and telling them, hey, we need to report this to the Treasury Department. And apparently, not only were these issues not reported to the Treasury Department, but she was later, according to her, retaliated against, demoted, and then eventually she decided to leave Deutsche Bank. Now, let me give you what Tammy McFadden tells the Times. You present them with everything, meaning you present the higher ups at Deutsche Bank with this evidence, and you give them a recommendation and nothing happens. It's the Deutsche Bank way. They are prone to discounting everything. Now, McFadden, a longtime anti-money laundering specialist with Deutsche Bank, said she reviewed the transactions and found that money had moved from Kushner companies to Russian individuals. She concluded that the transactions should be reported to the government, in part because federal regulators had ordered Deutsche Bank, which had been caught laundering billions of dollars for Russians, to toughen its scrutiny of potentially illegal transactions. So she was doing the right thing. She's like, yo, we got caught before. We're supposed to be doing the right thing now. So I'm doing the right thing, and I'm drawing attention to these accounts which could be involved in criminal activity. And apparently nothing happened. And let me be clear about one other thing. We don't know for sure if money laundering was occurring. The Times piece didn't go so far as to claim that. What we do know is that a proper investigation wasn't done because these accounts were never reported.
What we do know is tick, 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 tick. Okay, so
we do not know that.
Let me explain a couple of things. So when she said, hey, Kushner's account is doing these suspicious activities with Russian accounts, that was in the summer of 2016, right in the middle of the election. At that point, Trump knows he's the Republican nominee, but doesn't yet know whether he's going to win or not. And there's money going from Kushner's account to Russia's. Now, Anna's right, suspicious activity does not mean that you necessarily did any crime. It just means you should be flagged and investigated. But what Deutsche Bank apparently did it on a regular basis, which got them massive hundreds of millions of dollars in fines before. Think about that, let that sink in. Hundreds of millions of dollars in fines because they regularly do not report suspicious activity that needs to be reported. Why? Because they make a lot of money letting people money launder through Deutsche Bank. And so, and that's not speculation, that they've confessed to that. They have been sanctioned for that. They've paid giant fines for that. And they said that they put things into place to make sure it doesn't happen again. And now here are 5 employees from Deutsche Bank going, no, they don't do that. Okay, they don't do that as a regular practice. And they especially don't do it with Trump and his family and Russian accounts. So for God's sake, somebody get the Deutsche Bank accounts, somebody get them. And I have an update on that as well in a second. But I want to be clear also on the employees and what happened with them. So McFadden reports this stuff to her superiors because that's literally her job. Her job is to flag suspicious activity. She says, okay, I flagged it for you guys. And under every normal procedure, according to 2 other managers that talked to the New York Times, they said, yes, it was definitely suspicious activity. She was right. And management buried it. Then they buried her. Not only did they take her off that team because they're like, she's doing her job, we got to remove her from this part of the company. They eventually terminated her, and it was an incredibly flimsy excuse. She's right to pursue legal remedies in that. But another person who was in that similar line of work at Deutsche Bank, and these are all managers, so it's not like, hey, they got the bank teller or anything like that. These are executives. She was not terminated. She resigned in protest, saying, you guys are not following the government orders and you will not report these suspicious activities that are significantly suspicious. And there's a lot of them. There's a high quantity of them and Deutsche Bank's just not reporting them. So that is why this is a really interesting story. Why is that money going back and forth? And will we ever find out what it was for?
So, of course, federal investigators are looking into this. There has been a subpoena for the documents pertaining to the loans that and accounts that Donald Trump took out with Deutsche Bank. And look, Donald Trump keeps doing things that make him appear to be even more suspicious. So I'll give you an example. When it comes to this particular story, just note that Trump and his family sued Deutsche Bank back in April, seeking to block it from complying with the congressional subpoena. And the update today is that a federal court has upheld the subpoena for these financial documents. So
just to be clear, the House Oversight Committee had asked for financial documents from Donald Trump on a number of issues, including from Mazars, which is a company that has some of his financial accounts with them. And so the judge in this case, US District Judge Amit Mehta, just ruled that Trump cannot block Mazars from handing over information to Congress. And he was very clear about it. He said, Congress has a legitimate purpose. They are looking to strengthen ethics and disclosure laws. They're concerned about the Foreign Emoluments Clause. These are what he calls facially valid legislative purposes. So that's Congress being facially valid. Trump has never been facially valid. And he said, on the other hand, Trump's team for denying the information is pretty much non-existent. So you have to, when you're in a courtroom, you actually have to make a case. You have to present reasonable arguments, and Trump never does, and neither did his legal team, and that's why they lost. If they get, this is what I've said from day one. What I'm most concerned about, anybody who watches the Young Turks can tell you, is money laundering. And for God's sake, somebody get a hold of his accounts. Any other person, as even a Republican congressman now says, if they had these kind of suspicions around them, they would have had your financial transactions a million years ago.
We'd be in prison
They'd have been
already.
inside your bank account. We'd all be in prison by now if you did any of this stuff. And I'll give you one more piece of context. When they want to target someone, they go even deeper than they're supposed to on suspicious activities. For example, when financial interests were targeting Eliot Spitzer when he was the governor of New York, they asked the bank to go above and beyond in finding his activities suspicious, even though he actually did not qualify for that at all. They're like, yeah, but who cares? Let's go get the guy, okay? So they found him taking out a number that was totally normal and reasonable. It should not have been flagged. And then they traced it back to prostitutes, et cetera, because they had targeted him. So that was an actual witch hunt. Now, in this case, you have the exact opposite. Trump's and Kushner's red flags are all over the place. And they're like, nah, ignore it, do not turn it over to the government. So that's what Deutsche Bank is doing, and they have a record of doing this over and over and over again. Why do you think Trump went to them? Why do you think they're the only ones who made a deal with Trump? No other legitimate bank across the world would touch Donald Trump with a 10-foot pole because he has 6 bankruptcies. He writes books about how he brags about how he rips off his creditors. Which creditor in their right mind would give this guy $300 million? You know, over 20 years that he's been working with Deutsche Bank, they lent him in different transactions, $2.5 billion. Everybody else that's lent him that kind of money has lost it. And then he would, like I said, turn around and brag like, you were so stupid to lend me money. I did a smart business move where I ripped you off and didn't pay you back. Right? So there is something incredibly suspicious about what Deutsche Bank continues to do to this day. And they got to get real prosecutors in there and get into those records and find out what the hell they're doing with the Russians.
Now, David K. Johnston has done a great job in reporting and following Donald Trump's financial issues. And he actually brought up a few issues in a recent interview on, I believe, MSNBC. It helps to contextualize the story a little more. So let's take a quick look at that.
We know for a fact that Donald Trump has been involved in money laundering in the past. He's been fined for it. We know that Deutsche Bank has been fined over $600 million just for laundering money for Russian oligarchs, which is to say Vladimir Putin's criminal gang. And we know that the statements from Deutsche Bank and the Trump organization that you just read, Richard, are non-denials denials. The Trump organization says, we never heard of this. Why would you? It was locked up in the bank. And the bank says, we didn't stop anybody from pushing it upwards. Well, the story makes it clear. Tammy McFadden pushed it upward, and then her career began to go badly after that. So in addition, the Times has a very pregnant line in it. It says that there are other, quote, politically connected people, end quote, who also were swept up. And it's clear that David Enrich, a very good reporter at the New York Times, has seen these documents. So there are other people whose money laundering, suspicion of money laundering activities were also apparently quashed by the people at the private banking unit of Deutsche Bank in New York. This is, for Donald Trump, a really serious problem.
Okay, so I don't mean to be a defeatist, but this is gonna sound defeatist. I know that this is serious. I'm happy that members of Congress are taking it seriously, and I'm happy that a federal court has upheld the subpoena in order to get more information on what's going on. At the same time, let's keep it real. Trump is above the law. Trump is above the law. First of all, if they had reported this to the Treasury Department, which was the right course of action, what, Steve Mnuchin was gonna investigate this? Come on, man, he's above the law. Plain and simple. Democrats are weak. They're not doing enough when it comes to the obstruction of justice issue, right? You think that they're actually gonna do something once they look into this issue and adjudicate it and figure out that let's say there is evidence that he was laundering money. What are they gonna do? What are they gonna do?
Yeah.
So it's so frustrating to talk about these stories when there are no consequences for this guy ever.
Yeah, no, I remain hopeful, and I'll tell you. Look, I get your reasoning, which is that Democrats are pathetic. So if he killed someone on Fifth Avenue, not only his supporters would let him get away with it, Nancy Pelosi would let him get away with it.
And not only that, I mean, look, I'm being harsh toward Democrats for obvious reasons, but what about Republicans? I mean, Republicans, tuck tail and they do everything that Trump wants them to do. If anyone has the audacity to speak out against Trump, the entire Republican Party rains hell on him or her. And so this is the reason why I just really don't have much faith in Congress in regard to actually doing something once they have the evidence necessary.
But that's why I've been focused on money laundering from the start, because one, there's ample evidence publicly. It's not like I know something that no one else knows, that he has been doing money laundering for a long time with the Russians through Deutsche Bank. This is just a 28th confirmation of it. And number two, that is a very serious crime. So if Nancy Pelosi gets evidence of money laundering with the Russians and still does nothing, I think she should be impeached. And I'm gonna say something unbelievable. I think she probably will be. Like, not literally impeached, but like there will be a Democratic uprising like they've never seen before. I mean, if they just say, okay, yeah, the president is an obvious brazen criminal on numerous unbelievable felonies that other people are going to prison for, which by the way, half of that is already true. Then people say, no, then what is she doing? She was supposed to be resistance. And so she's now actively helping Donald Trump. And they keep telling us that they're on our team. I've yet to see it. I've yet to see Nancy Pelosi on my team. I've been looking for a long time. But look, back to the heart of the issue. On McFadden, the New York Times reports, her superiors told her to stop raising questions, according to Ms. McFadden and the two former managers. I mean, it doesn't get any clearer. That's two other managers saying, yeah, she brings up suspicious activity between Trump, Kushner, and the Russians, and he goes, stop doing that, okay? What else do you need? Get in there, let's go, let's go. Mueller's #1 problem was that he did not look into Trump's business activities. Well, why the hell do you think he's obstructing justice? So, and then here's the last quote. Two former employees said that they had raised concerns about transactions involving companies linked to prominent Russians. I need the financial information from Mazars, that's his accountants basically. I need his tax returns, and we need the Deutsche Bank accountant. We have obvious, brazen, suspicious activity with the one country we are concerned he is colluding with. Not investigating that is unbelievable negligence. Now, the Democrats claim they're trying to do that, and they are to some degree doing that, but they better get that information. The judges, any decent judge would cooperate with this because this is clearly suspicious. And when you have a legitimate subpoena from Congress, you must hand over the information. Now, to Anna's point, if the judges say yes, you must hand over the information, and the executive branch doesn't, there's a lot of talk about constitutional crisis, and it really isn't until the executive branch will not follow an order from the judicial branch. And so when the judiciary says you must hand over the records, and if Trump doesn't, then they all got to go to jail. And impeachment proceedings have to start immediately. Otherwise, we don't have rule of law in this country. Because then the executive branch can say, I don't care about legislative branch or the judiciary. I've now effectively destroyed your system of government. I'm now above the law. So if once you got a valid court order, if they do not comply with it, they must start impeachment immediately. There's no excuse left. Otherwise, the Democrats should immediately remove Nancy Pelosi from being Speaker of the House, because she is then at that point colluding with Donald Trump to protect his criminal actions. TYT.com/impeach. get on there. Let's get that to a giant number and let's make them do it. Because Democrats, they're never gonna take any action unless you make them.
Well, there's a lot going on when it comes to the topic of impeachment, and we're actually going to continue that conversation when we come back from the break. It turns out that it took a Republican in Congress to speak out in favor of impeachment for this issue to become real. So we'll tell you who said what and the backlash he's facing when we return.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, "You must unlearn what you have learned." And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Let me read a bunch of tweets for you guys. Admiral Marsden says, you can say tick, 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 tick all you want, but there's just another report of possible Trump crimes that Dems will do zilch about. How many times have we seen evidence of his obvious crimes, including the 10 counts of obstruction in the report, and the Dems did nothing? So that is backing up what Anna said, and you're gonna see that there's actually a Republican that says we should do something. Our own J.R. Jackson tweets in, don't forget this info from last year. Retiring SCOTUS Justice Kennedy's son worked for Deutsche Bank's real estate division when it loaned him $1 billion when no one else would. The same justice that left to allow Trump to nominate Kavanaugh. So I read into the details of that, and it doesn't seem directly connected to these latest rounds of potential money laundering, but he did lend Trump $1 billion when no one else would. He's somewhat connected to that. It's certainly interesting enough to pursue, although I don't know how that's going to end. And then last one is Eddie O'Donnell. He says, Cenk, she's not the resistance now, she's the hashtag assistance. Ooh, that's a good one, Eddie. Okay, so hashtag the assistance might start to trend a little bit, referring to Nancy Pelosi. Okay, Anna, what's next?
Aspiration is next. So Aspiration takes 10% of what they make and they put it toward charity, and they do not invest your money in questionable companies or industries like the fossil fuel industry, and they pay you 2% interest on your account. So go to aspiration.com/TYT, check it out. As Cenk says, you don't have to put all your money there. You could do a little bit, try it, see if you like it, and if you do, then you can move your money there, all of it.
Yes, it's nice to have peace of mind and better returns. So
yes.
That's why we chose him as a partner, because it makes sense for you guys and for us.
Yeah.
Aspiration.com/TYT. All right, Anna, what's next?
Republican Representative Justin Amash appears to be calling for impeachment proceedings toward Donald Trump. Now, this was the conclusion he came up with after reading the entirety of the Mueller report, and here's what he tweeted. Now, it was a lengthy Twitter thread. I chose the tweets that I think are the most relevant. Let me share them with you. He says, here are my principal considerations or conclusions. Attorney General Barr has deliberately misrepresented Mueller's report. President Trump has engaged in impeachable conduct. Partisanship has eroded our system of checks and balances, and few members of Congress have read the report, which I think is pretty clear, right?
Yeah. On number 4, I would say, of course, yeah. Probably if 2 other members of Congress read the entire report, I'd be surprised. And there's 535 of them.
So he continues to tweet, In comparing Barr's principal conclusions, congressional testimony, and other statements to Mueller's report, it is clear that Barr intended to mislead the public about special counsel Robert Mueller's analysis and findings. Under our Constitution, the president, quote, shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. While high crimes and misdemeanors is not defined, the context implies conduct that violates the public trust. Contrary to Barr's portrayal, Mueller's report reveals that President Trump engaged in specific actions and a pattern of behavior that met the threshold for impeachment. Now, this led to fire and fury, right? So the Republican Party is angry about this. Donald Trump, of course, immediately tweeted in response to this. And I want to share his tweets with you in just a second. He says, never a fan of Justin Amash. Really? You never really tweeted about him before. A total lightweight who opposes me and some of our great Republican ideas and policies just for the sake of getting his name out there through controversy. If he actually read the biased Mueller report composed by 18 angry Dems who hated Trump, he would see that it was nevertheless strong on no collusion and ultimately no obstruction, blah, 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 blah. You guys get the point.
I don't know if anyone in the Republican Party, apparently there's one, Justin Amash, has any logic left. How can you keep saying that it's 18 angry Democrats who proved I was completely innocent in a witch hunt they conducted of me, which completely exonerated me? That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any goddamn sense. And they're like, oh, absolutely, that's right. It was a witch hunt by 18 angry Democrats. And that's why they showed that Trump is totally innocent. What, right? We're not talking the same language anymore. They've just detached themselves from logic. So, but I'm heartened to find one Republican in the land who says, yeah, no, your eyes aren't lying to you. The report had over 10 instances of clear obstruction of justice, a clear felony. And our job is to impeach a president who has committed felonies. This is not complicated. And he's probably scratching his head going, why aren't the Democrats doing anything about this? And that's another fundamental misunderstanding that almost everybody in Washington has about current day politics, because the Democrats are paid to lose. So they don't do anything because their donors want them to be weak, selected them ahead of time to be weak and not to be aggressive and fight back against the Republican Party. So Amash is looking around as the Democrats on the verge of victory have surrendered, going, I don't get it, but I vote impeachment.
So my mind always goes back to what you say on this show, Cenk, which is people like Nancy Pelosi have used Donald Trump as a fundraising tool. So the fear mongering about Trump isn't meant to garner support for impeachment proceedings. It's meant to fear monger and it's meant to help them in their efforts to raise money. At the same time, I mean, we say Democrats, and it's a bit of a blanket statement, but in reality, there are some Democrats who want to fight and have been fighting aggressively. It's just that they're not part of the Democratic leadership. They're usually freshman Democrats like Rashida Tlaib, who's fighting pretty aggressively for impeachment proceedings. But nonetheless, Nancy Pelosi thinks, no, this is a fundraising tool. I'm gonna use it to my advantage. This is what I refer to when I talk about how successful I am in the party, and then let's call it a day. But they continuously underestimate how damaging this is to the country, right? Like, I get it, you want to raise money, but in your efforts to raise money, you are essentially telling the country that the executive branch is above the law, and that is unacceptable.
Yeah, so now let's go to Amash's motives, because I'm not naive. Of course I look for ulterior motives, especially when it's a right winger and a Republican. And by the way, Amash is more right wing than most of, almost all of Congress, actually.
He's a Tea Party guy.
Yeah, he's Tea Party through and through, which means he's the most extreme right winger. But sometimes when you go that far right, you'll find principle. It doesn't happen often. So anyway, there's speculation that he might run against Trump on the Libertarian ticket. So let's think that one through. Who thinks that the Libertarian ticket is going to win in this election? Almost no one. Now, so what's the real political dynamic for Justin Amash? Is this his district? Well, his district is very Republican. One of the counties in his district voted for Trump by 30 points. So 9 out of 10 Republicans in a recent poll still back Trump completely on the issue of impeachment and just about everything else. So if you're a Republican Party official, there is an excellent chance that you will be punished severely for opposing Donald Trump. And he did it anyway. So if you're Justin Amash, the correct political calculation, if that's all you care about, is do not oppose Trump under any circumstance. And in fact, of course, he had a primary opponent within hours.
Yep.
So if you're saying, like one of the critiques from the right is, he's just a turncoat looking for attention. Looking for attention in a deeply red district? I mean, the attention you're gonna get is a primary opponent, a lot of money spent against you, and maybe driven out of Congress. Why the hell would a politician look for that kind of attention? He's been coasting along in that district comfortably, being an extreme right winger. So it does appear to be an actual act of principle. I know for a Republican elected to national office, that seems near impossible.
For a politician, period, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
but we have one. It looks like we've got one. So by the way, I'll say now in hindsight, all the things that I massively disagree with Amash on, and we've talked about some of them on the show, I'll give him respect in hindsight that he might actually believe those things as opposed to being paid to believe those things like every other Republican and 80% of Democrats.
So let's talk about the reaction to Amash, because that part of the story I think is fascinating, and you're absolutely right in that he's being punished by the Republican Party. Following news that Representative Justin Amash, a Tea Party Republican out of Michigan, is supportive of impeachment proceedings toward Donald Trump, a number of right-wingers came out against him, including a state representative by the name of Jim Lower, who is now saying that he will challenge him in a primary. So that's the first issue. Secondly, there are a number of right-wingers who have gone on television, and even if they've been a little critical of Trump in the past, they're essentially saying, this isn't a good idea. Mitt Romney happens to be one of them. Let's take a look.
My own view is that Justin Amash has reached a different conclusion than I have. I respect him. I think it's a courageous statement. But I believe that to make a case for obstruction of justice, you just don't have the elements that are evidenced in this document. And I also believe that an impeachment call is not only something that relates to the law, but also considers practicality and politics. And the American people just aren't there. And I think those that are considering impeachment have to look also at the jury, which would be the Senate. The Senate is certainly not there either.
So Mitt Romney is Reek, and he will always be Reek. That's a reference to Game of Thrones. But what's also fascinating is how apparently behind the scenes, other right-wing Republicans are saying things privately that they're unwilling to say publicly. And Chris Coons revealed that in a recent interview. Let's take a look at that.
Were you surprised to see a Republican, Justin Amash, saying that the president, saying so overtly that the president did engage in impeachable conduct?
I was surprised to see a Republican congressman saying publicly what I think many are thinking privately, which is those who have read the Mueller report cannot avoid the conclusion that the president and some of his absolutely core advisors engaged in profoundly disappointing, reprehensible conduct that would rise to the level of an obstruction of justice charge if he were anyone other than President of the United States.
But you don't think that Republicans are thinking that privately, do you?
Yes.
What makes you say that?
Conversations.
So it's not so private.
There are very few who would be willing to say publicly that this conduct is reprehensible for a president.
But you have spoken to Republicans who have shared with you that they think that it's also impeachable.
There's a big difference between thinking that the Mueller report reveals conduct that is deeply disappointing, inappropriate, even borderline or actually illegal, and saying they would vote to remove the president. I have not spoken to a single Republican senator who would vote to remove the president. Many privately expressed concerns about what was in the Mueller report, in part because of the gap between what Attorney General Barr characterized as being in the Mueller report and what was actually in the Mueller report for those who've taken the time to read through it.
So this whole situation makes it pretty clear that we have all these spineless lawmakers sitting in Congress who are unwilling to do the right thing.
Yeah, so look, that's why I respect Amash more. And look, I'm annoyed by Democrats who say you should never agree with the Republicans on anything. Well, goddamn it, it depends. I'm also greatly annoyed by the opposite, where they say, well, bipartisan compromise is by definition a good thing. God damn it, it depends. What are we agreeing to? If we're agreeing to tax cuts for the rich, no. If we're agreeing to impeaching Trump, yes. Take yes for an answer. So, when you compare Amash to the two guys you just saw, it's a stark contrast. Mitt Romney, you could tell, you know it already, but you can tell even in that interview, thinks that Trump did it, that it's illegal. And he's like, well, it does. I don't know if it rises to the level, and I don't know if there's enough evidence in that document. You know there's enough evidence in that document, and you're using political speak. And you're saying, hey, I don't think we have the votes in the Senate to do it. Well, first of all, you're a vote in the Senate. You're a United States senator. And even if you thought, well, I'll vote this way, but the other Republicans won't, that shouldn't preclude you from giving you the real opinion you have to your voters, which it's super obvious you're not. Everyone knows that Mitt Romney thinks that Donald Trump did it and that it's a crime. But he goes out there, no, we're not there yet, because he's a slimy, greasy politician. And then Coons comes out and he's like, well, the Republicans know it, but I'm not saying that they're there for impeachment and blah, 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 blah. Just say it, goddamn it. Democrats talk in such political speak, and no actual human being talks like that. If I was Chris Coons, I'd say, look, I can't betray the confidence of my Republican colleagues who confided in me that they think that it's impeachment worthy. No, I don't think they're gonna vote for it. You know why? They're politicians. That's why they're not gonna vote for it. But is it impeachable? Hell yes, it's impeachable. Instead, he couching and, but it's offensive material in the Mueller report. But whether it rises to the level, just God damn it, man. So when you have a Republican guy who stands up and goes, look, man, I read it. I understand the English language. I understand the law. Mueller clearly said he broke the law in all these different instances. So you can say all you like, but I know that if I was on the shoe on the other foot, I'd vote to impeach, so I'm gonna impeach here. And he's totally right that the Democrats and the Republicans flip-flop depending on who's the president on issues of what's impeachable, on issues of character, etc. And we point that out all the time. On every other issue too, Schumer and McConnell will flip positions depending on who's on the majority and who's in the minority. And they do it so brazenly, we're all sick to death of it. So when you have not only a politician, but a Republican acting on seeming principle, I know it's so shocking that it's nearly impossible to believe, but it stands in stark contrast to all other weasels in Washington. And so, by the way, how are the Republicans reacting? Of course, they're going ballistic. They're all a lot of the voters, the people online, etc. They're going to help Amash's primary opponent. His primary opponent, appropriate name that his last name is lower. So he goes a little lower, and he changed his Facebook picture to him standing in front of a Trump 2020 banner.
It's so sad.
I mean, it's like literally planting the flag going, I will bow my head to Donald J. Trump. I am a little monkey in service of the big ape. That's who Lower is, okay? Very appropriately named.
I'm a big, beautiful ape.
Yeah, and it's so sad, it's so pathetic. And those Republicans think they're being strong by being a little weasel to a criminal like Donald Trump. Meanwhile, Amash's Facebook page's background is a quote from President George Washington about the baneful effects of party loyalty delivered in his farewell address in 1796. And that's how a man of principle acts. And finally,
so
you got one more
other thing. So Republicans are also now attacking Amash because apparently his family is Palestinian, but they're Palestinian Christians. But nonetheless, they think that his Palestinian background is what's informing his attacks toward Trump. No, it's just he's someone who has some common sense and actually read the Mueller report and finds it deeply troubling and thinks that no one should be above the law in this country, including a Republican president.
So Amash's father is a Palestinian Christian, his mom is a Syrian Christian. And back when he agreed with the Republican Party and went even further right-wing than them, they were like, oh, it's okay, no, Palestinian, it doesn't matter. Did he say tax cuts for the rich? Yes, we love Justin Amash. Go on Fox News, tell everybody tax cuts for the rich, right? Now, the minute he doesn't agree 100%, all of a sudden, goddamn Palestinian. You see how that works? So they use you for their own purposes. Does that mean they like you? Does that mean that they relate to you, that you're one of them? No. You're a useful tool. But the minute you cause any kind of ruckus at all of a sudden, you turn back into a brown person. You turn back into an Arab or someone who's black or someone who's gay or a woman, etc. And they throw you onto that bus so quick. And that's what's happening to Justin Amash. And that's the true face of the Republican Party. The exception proves the rule.
When we come back, we're gonna give you an update on Iran and show you what Trump had to say during a recent interview on Fox News on this very topic.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
We'll be right back.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, you got a tweet for us?
I have a tweet. It's from Monica for Democracy.
Okay.
And she writes in and says, Cenk, your claim of continued optimism made me think of Anna Kasparian's comparison of you to Jon Snow in last night's review of Game of Thrones. You're being very Jon Snow right now. You are.
Okay, but when you need, well, I know I'm not gonna do spoilers. Okay, but look, I'll take any comparison to Jon Snow. I appreciate it. Okay, let's put it that way. All right, let me go to Twitter here. Iqbal Fazer says, I love #TYT Live, but I find that iguana or whatever that lizard mascot thing is gross and scary. At least it's not a snake. I hate snakes. How dare you? Okay, that's our bannerman.
That's cold-blooded. I know science.
Oh yeah. Hashtag I know science. Anna, the science woman, sort of. Anyway, no, Eclectic Miscellanea.
Science woman.
Eclectic Miscellanea says, I think the mystery has been solved. Kofefe is Russian for money laundering. I was wearing my Kofefe shirt the other day, which you can get on shoptyt.com. No Way says, say what you want. If this was Democratic president and Democratic-controlled House and Senate, the president would be impeached. The Dems would impeach their own in this situation. That actually, look, God, that's devastating. I had not thought of it that way. Do I think there's a higher chance that the Democrats would help the Republicans impeach a Democratic president under a similar situation? Probably, yeah. So I don't mean all of them, and I get it. They'd go into partisan lines, and they didn't help impeach Bill Clinton. But Bill Clinton, I mean, that was almost nothing at all. But in a situation where a Democratic president had committed multiple felonies, an obstruction of justice, and there was a special counsel that said he definitely did it, and Congress should act, they'd probably say it's a distraction. Let's just get the vice president in there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's a distraction. The Republicans won't let us do anything. And by the way, hey, Democrats, if you don't try impeachment, maybe you'll never find those Republicans who are actually think he should be impeached. But if you made a giant trial out of it, maybe they would come out of the woodworks and go, oh, this is really embarrassing. I vote yes. But as usual, the Democrats, they won't bother trying because they don't want to accomplish anything. And whenever I say Democrats, I always mean Democratic leadership. Obviously, now there's some wonderful Democrats in office.
Yeah.
All right.
I'd like to know where coming out of the woodwork comes from. Like, where did that originate? Anyway.
Probably out of science, which I'm surprised you don't know.
A, I'm not surprised I don't know. And B, I don't think it has anything to do with science. Like, it woodworking. That's what it's referencing, right? So
probably it's an animal, like a termite coming out of the woodworks. But anyway, we'll look it up. But I will tell you this on another random note, since we're talking about impeachment. If Trump goes down for money laundering, the victory lap I will take will be stunning.
I know.
It'll be record breaking.
It'll be so unbearable, but well deserved. Okay, I'll give you that. But I don't think you're going to see that day.
Well,
so we'll see.
Well, as Arya would say, not today, but but maybe another day.
Look, Squarespace is insane because they're still giving you guys a 10% discount. So if you're looking to build a website, go to Squarespace. You get 10% off if you go to squarespace.com/TYT. All right, now let's talk about Iran. Donald Trump recently gave an interview to Fox News, and he is giving us some mixed signals as to whether or not he plans on invading Iran. Does he want to escalate tensions? Does he want war? I don't know. Why don't you watch the video and you can decide for yourselves? Take a look.
I ended the Iran nuclear deal. And actually, I must tell you, I had no idea it was going to be as strong as it was. The country is devastated from the standpoint of the economy.
But now you see, the thing that I think a lot of people are worried about is that they heard what you said in 2016 and liked it when you said no more stupid wars. And then they hear these stories about troops and so on.
I just don't want them to have nuclear weapons. And they can't be threatening us. And you know, with all of everything that's going on, and I'm not one that believes, I'm not somebody that wants to go into war. Because war hurts economies, war kills people, most importantly, by far, most importantly. Right. If you do have a group, and they call it the military-industrial complex, they never want to leave, they always want to fight. No, I don't want to fight. But you do have situations like Iran. You can't let them have nuclear weapons. You just can't let that happen.
But why is he so dumb? Like, okay, so I don't want nuclear weapons, but that's what the Iran nuclear deal did. It prevented them from developing nuclear weapons. In fact, they had shipped the enriched uranium out of their country as part of the nuclear deal. There were actual safeguards there. There was a way of making sure that they were following and complying with that nuclear deal. And even as Trump pulled the United States out of that deal, Iran continued to comply. It wasn't until Trump threatened the European countries still doing business with Iran that Iran decided, all right, well, what is the point of complying at this point, right? That there's really no point. So look, if you want Iran to remain, without nuclear weapons, then continue on with the Iran nuclear deal. He did the opposite. And then in the end, he talks about the military-industrial complex, which I love. I love that talk. That is the talk that I'm in favor of. But he's saying two conflicting things in the same interview.
So this is the problem with electing a president that's both arrogant and unintelligent. The arrogance comes into, like, it's okay. I'm just going to threaten them and they won't do anything in return. And I don't have to read the Iran nuclear deal. I know that Obama did it, so I'm opposed to it. So what is it you want to accomplish? I want to make sure they don't have uranium in the country. But that's what the deal did. So it would have been great if you read it instead of being an arrogant jackass, okay? And then, look, I don't want the stupid wars. I'm against that. Then why did you hire John Bolton?
Yes.
Whose whole job is to create stupid wars.
Exactly.
And why are you sitting around getting tricked by him? Because John Bolton turns to him and goes, I know you're against wars, but Iran, they might get nukes because of the deal that I told you to tear up earlier, which you didn't bother to read or investigate because you're stupid and I took advantage of your stupidity. So why don't you, you don't want to seem weak. Oh, triggered, Trump gets triggered. Oh, I'm not weak. I'll threaten nuclear war. I'll threaten war. We'll obliterate them. So easy to manipulate because he's one of the dumbest guys in the country.
So he also tweeted, and his tweet seems to push for war. He said, quote, if Iran wants to fight, that will be the official end of Iran. Never threaten the United States again. But you're the one threatening Iran constantly, incessantly. John Bolton continues to do that. And interestingly enough, if you listen to the officials from Iran, the moderates who do not want war, and they're very clear in not wanting war, I mean, you get a completely different picture compared to what John Bolton and the warmongers from the Trump administration are telling you. So let's go to the next video. This is actually actually an interview that the foreign minister of Iran did with Chris Wallace. It was on April 28th, so it's a little older, but it kind of gives you a sense of where they're coming from. Take a look.
So you think it's Israel, Bolton,
Saudi Arabia,
Salman's,
and United Arab Emirates.
all trying to exercise regime change?
At least. They have all shown an interest in dragging the United States into a conflict. I do not believe that President Trump wants to do that. I believe President Trump ran on a campaign promise of not bringing the United States into another war. But I believe President Trump's intention to put pressure, the policy of maximum pressure on Iran, in order to bring Iran to its knees so that we would succumb to pressure, is doomed to failure. And I think these four individuals know this.
So that's 100% correct. That doesn't mean Iran's correct about everything. They're incorrect about many, many things, including how they treat their own people. But does Israel, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and the neoconservatives in this country want to push us into a war with Iran for regime change? Yes. How do I know that? They've said it publicly multiple times, and they continue to say it. So it's not a state secret. John Bolton can be caught on TV any day saying that he wants regime change. He said it before he got in the Trump White House, and he's been pushing for it ever since. So yeah, is there a plot to attack Iran? Absolutely. So, and we always like say, oh my God, at some point Iran has chanted bad things about America. Well, our president just said that it'll be the end of Iran. If Iran had said that about us, oh, we will end America. We'd be like, let's go to war. We gotta go to war. I can't believe Iran said that. We say it, and oh, no big deal. Of course, we're allowed to bully anyone we like. We're allowed to say we're gonna annihilate them, destroy them, terminate them, end them, because hypocrisy, who cares? We're number one. And they say, oh, Iran has declared our troops a terrorist. Yeah, important context to that would be, that's because we declared their troops terrorists. If you leave that part out, then you've told a terribly misleading story. Oh, Iran is being potentially hostile in attacking ships, although we have absolutely no evidence of it. We just brought in a carrier group into the Persian Gulf to threaten Iran.
Exactly, yeah. So the United States keeps provoking Iran. Iran actually has been very restrained considering. And the whole idea is, well, the second they fire back, that will give the Trump administration and goons like Bolton the ability to attack Iran militarily and then try to justify it by saying, well, look at what Iran did. But again, you're right. Look at the context. Look at what the United States has done to provoke them. And the foreign minister had more to say. And this next video kind of talks to or speaks to the geopolitical ramifications of what Trump did with this Iran nuclear deal. Take a look.
Engagement is not producing results in Iran. President Trump has made sure that the people of Iran would not believe in engagement. We approached the international community in good faith. We reached an agreement with the international community, with the United States, 6 other powers. President Trump, just because he disliked President Obama, just left that agreement without having read it. And people of Iran started to feel and started to see that engagement does not have dividends. That's a very bad message, not only that you're sending to the people of Iran, but you're sending to the rest of the world, that they should not rely on the signature of a president of the United States.
So I thought that was an important video to share with you, because remember, while this is all happening, Trump is still pretending as if he's going to get North Korea to unilaterally disarm. But why would North Korea unilaterally disarm? Especially when you're pushing for regime change in Venezuela, you're pushing for regime change in Iran. You have pulled out of a nuclear deal that the United States had previously agreed to. I mean, these are all signs and signals to other countries that we're trying to pursue diplomatically. And I love the fact that he raised that issue, because, I mean, look, is the Trump administration gonna listen to that? Of course not. But I think it's important for voters to know how much harm this is doing when it comes to other foreign relations issues.
I think Trump might be jealous that Bush is still considered a worse president by some. And he likes to win. And so, especially at failing, no one beats him at failing. 6 bankruptcies and counting.
I'm the best failure.
Yeah,
no one fails as big as me.
No one knows this, but it's the best business strategy to go bankrupt. That's really smart business. That's why I've done it so many times. And so it's a sore spot for him that Bush invaded Iraq and killed nearly 1 million civilians and cost ourselves, this country, trillions of dollars. He's like, he so desperately wants to say, hold my beer. I can screw this up worse than you can. And the Republicans, bless their hearts, they found someone dumber than Bush, which seemed previously unimaginable. So Dick Cheney tricked Bush into the Iraq war fairly easily. Now Bolton's like, hey Dick, hold my beer. Watch how easy it is to manipulate this orange buffoon. He doesn't even know that I'm the biggest warmonger in the country. He ran on getting us out of interventionist wars and then hired me. What an idiot.
Now, speaking of Bolton, Chris Wallace also interviewed him right after he interviewed Iran's foreign minister. And I just want to show you the type of intellect someone like Bolton has on complex foreign policy issues.
Ambassador, as you just heard, Foreign Minister Zarif says you're part of the B team, a small group of leaders, you in the US, others in the Middle East, Bibi Netanyahu, bin Salman, bin Zayed, who are working to try to steer President Trump into a conflict with Iran. Your response?
Well, he also said in another interview he wished he were working with the A-team. You know, in the past few days, the North Koreans have also called me dim-sighted. The Cubans have said I'm a pathological liar. I'd say I've had a pretty good week.
All right, well, good to know that he is Trump's national security advisor. Being called stupid is a good week for him.
Yeah, maybe Trump will look at that and be like, oh, that's my kind of guy. I got past the mustache. Thank God for that. This guy's even dumber than I am. Makes me feel great. Yeah, no, those are not compliments. I don't know if you know that. And so, but in John Bolton's tiny little mind, which to be fair is vastly greater than Trump's, he thinks, well, if I've got bad guys looking in his mind, and in reality, especially with the North Koreans, etc., saying bad things about me, great, we're close to war. I say bad things about them, I go Trump into saying bad things about them, about how we're gonna end their entire existence. That could be a twofer, because not only could that start a war with Iran, but then North Korea gets the message, hey, if you don't have nukes, America will betray the deal that they made with you and then come and end your regime. If you're North Korea or anyone else, you know what that would make you do? Immediately try to get nukes, because that's the only way to protect yourself. So that's the message John Bolton is sending to the world. God help us all.
When we come back from the break, Trump gets into a catfight with Buttigieg and Fox News. We'll be back.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.